Hello students, welcome back to the Analyst for 30th April 2024, where we will be trying to understand 9 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now looking at the table of contents, we find the very first article is regarding paradox of thrift, and in this one we will be looking into the various aspects and linking with Indian economy too. In the next one, we'll be looking into the detailed concepts of the model code of conduct and the need for various reforms within the same. In the third article, we'll be looking into the Indian aspiration for building up its own semiconductor machine and industries in India. In the fourth article, we'll be looking into repolls and adjournments of elections in the country. And finally, we'll be looking at missions to the moon's far side, and we'll be also looking at the various aspects of the same. And finally, we'll be wrapping up with Prelims Snippets, which is news in shorts to cover effective revision for your prelims examination, which is upcoming soon. So stay tuned. So students, the first article for today will be Paradox of Thrift, which is a concept popularized by the British economist John Maynard Keynes, and he is also known as the father of modern economics. And it was popularized in his 1936 book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. And let me tell you, this is a very important topic for your prelims and mains. For prelims, we have economic and social development. For mains, we have the Indian economy and the issues that Indian economy has its with relation to planning, mobilization of resources and so on. And here I will be starting with a very important PYQ from 2017 mains, and the question runs like this: that among various factors for India's potential growth, and by growth we obviously mean the GDP growth, savings rate is the most effective one. Do you agree? And what are the other important factors available for growth potential? Now throughout this discussion we will be trying to understand the question also, and also the concept that came in the news, that is paradox of thrift. Now to understand paradox of thrift, let us all look at this cartoon. See, on this cartoon, on one side the cartoon is telling to save more. That means save, tighten your belt, tighten your wallets and do not spend more. And here we obviously mean that we are talking about saving money. And when we are talking about saving money, we obviously mean that we should not buy more and more goods and services, and that by that we mean that we have to be less consumerists, and we also have to be satisfied with our lesser wants. And on the other side, the economy is telling the person to spend more. Because why? Because there are many sellers of various goods and services, right? There are electronic items, there are furnitures, there are many other things in the market, and these producers have produced those goods and services for whom? For people like us only, for people like this, right? So they want us to spend more, because obviously they will be selling more goods and services, and this will be giving some amount of income to them. So on one side you see that saving is good for you as an household, as a person, as an individual. It will be helping you to save your expenses on the short term, and over a long period of time you can buy more and more better goods and services in the future, and also you can protect your future generations with your savings right now. But on the other hand, there are goods service providers, right? They want you to spend more, right? So this is one aspect of this, that when you try to save more, you are spending less money right now, that is today, and you are trying to spend money more tomorrow. But the things that you are not buying today, right, those producers, those companies, they will be staring at losses. This is what we mean by paradox of thrift, right? This means that rise in the savings rate of the individuals can surprisingly lead to the shortfall in overall savings in an economy. And here we have to understand that when we try to decrease our spending and say increase our savings right now, and this will be leading to fall in the overall savings in the economy, because if we do not buy goods and services right now, the businesses will be staring at losses, and if they stare at losses, they will not be producing more, and if they are not producing more, they will be employing less amount of people, right? And if employment in the near future will be coming down, we can obviously understand that people will be losing their jobs, and if people lose their jobs, they cannot buy any other goods and services, and also with their jobs the people are also losing their incomes, and if they are losing their incomes, they cannot save at all. So on an economy wide scale, we can understand if we increase the savings of the people, that means all of the people in the country are saving, it will be leading to future decrease in the savings of the economy too. This is what the theory is talking about, because the theory tells that whatever people save right now, right, the capitalists use savings for investment, right, but after a point of saving, more saving is actually bad for the economy, as we have just understood here. And why this is the case, we can look at it through a very simple formula of the GDP. We know that via the expenditure method of calculation of GDP, the GDP of the country is equal to the sum of consumption expenditure done by the people, the investment done by the people and the government and the rest of the, say, private businesses. It is also sum of the government expenditure and a net of the exports minus imports of the country. So we can understand, if the people are trying to save more, if the people are trying to save more in the nation, obviously the people are decreasing their consumption, right? If people are decreasing their consumption, obviously we find that the GDP will be decreasing. So this is also another implication apart from the decrease in the overall savings of the economy. So first we understand, this is the first thing that will be taking place, that future savings rate of the entire economy will be coming down. And also the second aspect is the GDP of the country will be also coming down. Now why this is the case? We have to look at this through the lens of the business cycle. We have to connect this concept of paradox of thrift with the business cycle. Now see, whenever we talk about business cycle, we take GDP on the y-axis and we take time on the x-axis. And we try to see that how GDP over a period of time is actually reacting with each other. Now when we talk about business cycle, here, let us start at this point, right? Let us start at this point when, say, for example, the customers in the economy, or say the people or the consumers in the economy, are buying more and more on goods and services, right? So whenever the business houses will be saying that the demand of the people is actually increasing, right, they will be also producing more and more goods and services, right? So this will be leading to an increase of the GDP, because obviously when the demand of the people will be increasing, the production of the business houses, they will be also increasing, and when the production of goods and services increase, this leads to increase in GDP of the country. So this is what it will be taking place, right? So this is a normal part of the business cycle, that the production increases in the short run whenever the demand increases. But whenever the demand increases, we obviously find that the prices of the goods also increase over a period of time, because obviously in a short period of time the demand for goods and services becomes more than the supply of goods and services in the market. So this will be leading to inflation, and that is why during positive phases, that means during upswings of economic cycles, we see a condition known as boom. And this is also associated with inflation and rising prices, but also on the other side, the production of goods and services also increase. And here on the other side, we find that whenever the inflation is too high, the government will be taking steps to curb the money supply in the economy. Now when the money supply will be brought down, or when the money with the hands of the people, they will be brought down by the RBI, or say the central bank, or even by the government of the day through contractionary fiscal policies, right? The economy will be again going down in a recession, right? So this is how a business cycle generally operates, and paradox of thrift also happens in the same, because whenever we see that recession is taking place during downward cycle of the business cycle, so here people are actually losing jobs, because in this recession cycle the production falls, and whenever the production falls, the people tend to lose their jobs. And when people tend to lose their jobs, they also try to have a habit during the initial peak periods to save more, to actually cope up more with more losses during the recession, right? So paradox of thrift is also talking about this tendency of the people, this behavior, this psychology of the people, that during distress time, crisis times, people try to save more, right? So this is how this business cycle is also linked with this paradox of thrift. Now here, how to overcome paradox of thrift, right? We understand that obviously savings, we cannot, as a government or as an institution, we cannot tell the people to save less, right? And spend more on goods and services, right? So here the government on itself can take some actions. Firstly, it can increase the government spending. When we are talking about the government of India, the government of India can itself lead to increase in government expenditure, because why? Because GDP of our country, we found out, it is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So let us try to increase all the other components other than C. So firstly, let us start with government. So we are telling the government to spend more, and this will be also increasing the GDP in the short run. Then we can also try to increase the investment from the public side or also from the government side. Then we can also try to encourage consumer spending. We can try to have more and more awareness campaigns and more habits of the people to spend more in the markets. Next, we can also encourage savings between the people with a particular purpose. That means savings for a particular, say, retirement plan, say for a particular stock market option, and so on. So savings must not be simply a static saving, or say savings must not be simply in the form of gold, or say those stacks of cash under your bed, right? And finally, we must also try to increase the exports of the country. So exports of the country can also increase. That means X minus M, they can also increase the GDP if it increases in return. And here, there are some economists also who do not agree with the paradox of thrift at all. They say that the bank savings actually give a pool of investable money for the business houses. That means that whenever the people are saving more and more with the banks, now banks are having more and more of funds to give to the individuals, to the businesses, to many other opportunities who will be actually investing in some other kind of businesses. So whenever the banks will be having more money with themselves, the banks can afford actually lowering the interest rates. So the interest rates will be coming down because the supply of money, or say the funds of the people's deposits with themselves, is actually too much. So when the banks have much money with themselves, they can easily afford lesser amount of interest rates, and lesser amount of interest rates will be leading to higher demand for various factors of production. That means there will be many entrepreneurs, there will be many business houses who will be demanding more and more land, labor, capital, and other kind of profits, right? Because they will be taking loans from the banks, right? They will be taking loans from the banks and to set up more and more businesses. So more savings is actually good for the banking system and later for the business system too. Then we also talk about that people are actually saving now. That means people are saving now, obviously for a purpose. That means maybe people will be wanting to go on a world tour after 10 years, or say buy a penthouse after 20 years. So people have many plans when they try to save, right? Maybe some people also are saving for their education services for the students, right? There are many people who save for a future purpose. That means the industrialists, right, they can actually understand the patterns of the savings of the people, so that right now they can actually try to shift their business operations in those areas for which the people are saving for the future, right? And this is what is actually seen in the advanced economies of the Western economies too, where the Western countries like US and UK and so on. So those countries are actually based on this logic and principle too. And here, when we talk about Indian household savings, as we can see, right, in 2020-21, right, when the COVID pandemic just struck, right, the savings rate in the last 3 years was the highest, right, as a percent of GDP, right, the household savings was at 11.5% of GDP. After that, in 2021 and 22, it decreased, and right now, in the last financial year 2022 to 2023, it is around 5.1% of the economy, because this we can attribute to the fallout of the pandemic and the various expenses of the people associated with the pandemic. Right? We understood that during the pandemic, the entire business operations shut down, and people had to spend out of their pocket, within their savings, from their savings, for various hospital expenses, for various livelihood expenses, and so on. So that is why in recent times we see that the savings in India for the households have actually decreased, right? And also, if you look at the trend from 2018 to 2022 financial years, into actually how the people of India or Indians are actually trying to save in various savings instruments. So let us understand this. Now let me tell you that people not only save in their bank accounts. Whenever we are talking about savings, right, we are actually talking about not spending your money on goods and services right now, and using that money for something else. Now something else can be mutual fund, it can be bank deposits simply, it can be life insurance funds, it can be provident and pension funds, it can be small savings funds and various other schemes such as buying gold, real estate, and so. These are also actually savings, right? So here we actually classify savings into two types: physical savings and financial savings. So physical savings are actually putting money, whatever money you have, whatever money you want to save, in physical assets like such as gold, real estate, right? And so on. Then financial savings are actually those kind of savings which are there in the financial sectors, such as the mutual funds, the bank deposits, and so on. So as you can see the pattern here, from 2020 onwards, right, the amount of bank deposits actually increased, but right now, as you can see, Indians are actually saving across a wide pool of funds here. But let me tell you that remember the question in 2017 means that is savings the only engine of growth for India? It is obviously no. While savings we definitely need, but it is not the only instrument. Apart from this, we also need demographic dividend, because as you can see, countries like Japan, right, countries like Italy and so on, right, so some countries of the West, some countries like China also, they had their demographic dividend and they utilized the people to skill them with proper amount of skills of the age, and they have also try to increase their economic growth. According to various reports, India's demographic dividend window, it started in 2018, it will be concluding till 2025. So this is actually a period of time when the government of India has to spend more on something which we know as human capital development. So human capital development, we are trying to spend more on education, skills, literacy, and so on. We have to also look at the nutritional status of the people so that they become more and more productive, because more productive nation, more prosperous nation. And also, apart from the demographic dividend and human development, we also need more and more focus on the infrastructural development. We also need a lot of roads, schools, colleges, right, and also airports, ports, and highways. So to make the economic growth more smooth and better, right? So we also need to focus on this, and we also need technological innovation. That is why the country is right now spending a lot on various new age products, right? It is focusing on technological development. And finally, the government of India also needs to focus on the ease of doing business in the country, because obviously using the savings, the business houses, they will be trying to increase their investment, increase their business operations, and for that the government must be reducing red tape, bureaucracy, and various rules and formalities when it comes to the setting up and also exit of business from India. And here we also need to look at the gross fixed capital formation in the recent times. That is, over the past 3 years, it is consistently increasing. This means that India is actually focusing on infrastructural development, technological development, right? So this is actually a very good sign. And let me tell you, all of these factors are actually other crucial factors for growth when it comes to the total growth of the country. In the next one, we'll be looking at the model code of conduct, because according to this editorial, a significant gap in the present framework of model code of conduct has appeared. And here we have to understand this in the context of the recent ongoing elections too. A very important articles for prelims when we look at Indian polity and governance, and also from GS2 perspective when we look at salient features of the Representation of People's Act. Now, here when we talk about the model code of conduct, this is an unique consensual arrangement between the Election Commission of India and the various political parties, right? Now, when we talk about the consensual arrangement, that means it is about the rules and code of conduct, right, which we'll be also looking in the next slide. Now, when we talk about MCC, we have to also look at the background and the evolution of MCC to its present form. So, it started in 1960 in Kerala, when the then Chief Election Commissioner K.V.K. Sundaram, he tried to implement a small set of regulations, or say do's and don'ts for elections, particularly to regulate the political speeches and propagandas, posters, so that it should not be containing any hateful campaigns and so on. Later in 1968, the then Chief Election Commissioner S.P. Sen Verma, he tried to implement the circulation of minimum standards of behavior between the various contesting political parties for elections, because it was seen that during electioneering, the political parties used to mobilize people on hatred and also spreading false information and so on. And in 1979, the Chief Election Commissioner S.L. Sagadar, he put restrictions on the party in power, because it was seen that increasingly, because the present party was in power, and during the next elections they would increase, or say they would try to influence the elections using various state machinery such as state vehicles, state funding, monies, campaigns, schemes and policies and so on. So it was also curbed in this particular year. In 1991, finally, the Chief Election Commissioner T.N. Seshan, who is also known as a model Chief Election Commissioner for the entire nation, He tried to again reframe all the existing rules and regulations, and he tried to exercise the constitutional power of the Chief Election Commissioner and the Election Commission of India for the enforcement of this model code of conduct. Now let me tell you, MCC is not a legal statute in the country. It is just a general set of guidelines, code of behavior published by the CEC and also by the Election Commission of India. And in the case, Supreme Court case of Union of India versus Harbans Singh Jalal and others in 2001, finally this MCC was granted the judicial authority, judicial sanctity for this enforcement of the MCC, and it was told that immediately after the press conference of the Election Commission of India for a particular election, the MCC will be in force. So it is very, very important that we have to also look at the guidelines as to what the guidelines will be in force just after the press conference of the Election Commission of India before the elections. Now it will be under 8 general headers. Firstly, it is about the general conduct of the various stakeholders in the elections. First, it will be firstly, regulating the various guidelines for avoiding activities that will be causing communal tensions. It should be also limiting the role of criticism of other political parties, confined to policies past work. Then it will be also respect for every citizen's home life and safety. Under meetings, right, the inform local police about the venue and timing of meeting by the political parties is a very, very important aspect of here. Under the procession, the political parties have to notify local police about details of various processions, meetings in advance, right? The political parties should also be collaborating with the authorities for ensuring peaceful polling. Then at the polling booth, right, the political parties' access is limited to authorized individual only, that is the authorized individual from the Election Commission of India side. Then the observers will be appointed by the ECI, Election Commission of India, to address complaints. And finally, the party in power, right, they should not be misusing any official position for campaigning, such as releasing new government schemes after announcement of election polls, or say using government vehicles and so on. And finally, the election manifesto of various political parties, they must not contravene the ideals and principles enshrined in the Constitution of the India. And here, these are the various strict guidelines which Election Commission of India's model code of conduct is actually looking at. But we have had various issues regarding the MCC, and that is why in this article also the author is advocating for giving more teeth to the MCC for the Election Commission of India. Firstly, we have to understand that MCC is not enforceable by any law. There is one Supreme Court case from 2001 that we also discussed here, right? It tried to give some judicial backing to the MCC, but that judicial backing is not enough to be classified MCC as a law. And whenever we have to understand, whenever we have a law for a particular thing, the people of the country and the various stakeholders of the political parties and also during elections, they have protection again from the court of law if there is an act. But there is no law, no statute for the same. Second, we also see in recent times there is a sharpening of political environment between or say during the elections, and this is actually blunting the or say decreasing the efficacy of the MCC. That means here the political parties are blatantly violating the MCC. That means, for example, for any guidelines, they are easily breaching the guidelines, and even the Election Commission of India is not being cognizant of the same. Then also there are various political party leaders whose activities are very, very questionable, and they sometimes involve themselves in hate speeches, right? They involve money power, muscle power. They also distribute liquor, freebies before the elections to influence voters, and these are all the reasons for which the free and fair elections are also not being possible in many areas of the nations according to the article. And here, because the main primary reason here, because the Election Commission of India do not even have the power to disqualify candidates, right? Next, we also understand that MCC has not clearly spelled out the consequence of the default. That means if a particular person, a political party or a candidate is not following the MCC, what should be the penalties? That means by far there are no penalties here, and that is why there is a need for the Election Commission of India to actually specify the punitive or punishment measures for anyone who is violating the MCC, right? hate speech, communal tensions, or say even caste-based tensions, they are not being addressed by the MCC, because after violation there are no actually punitive actions to be taken, because simply there are no punitive actions to be taken under MCC. And here also we find there are new forms of electoral malpractices, typically via social media, right? Also using technology such as deepfakes, AI, and so on. So also MCC is not updated to also deal with these new forms of malpractices. And finally, any political parties who are actually violating this MCC, they can willfully do so, because Election Commission of India, in addition to not disqualifying candidates, they cannot also deregister political parties. So that is why these are all the issues which are taking place. And that is why there are many reforms which are needed. See, firstly, the author of the editorial, he is talking about a punitive action should be taken within 72 hours of violation of the MCC, because any delay will be leading to decrease in the trust of the people on the Election Commission of India. Next, enforcement should be through other measures too. For example, say any communal riots, any hate speech, they can also be addressed to the Indian Penal Code, to the CRPC, and so on, to the various other say aspects of Indian legal systems. So there must be also linking MCC with the other legal Indian laws. Next, the author is beautifully also has given a very important step here. He talks about this step as graded punitive measure. That means if any candidate or any political party has violated the MCC, they must be given three options. Firstly, the initial penalty must be, say, a ban on campaigning for a specific period. This can be for a period of 3 days, 1 week, or so on. Even after this, they have violated the MCC again, they will be banned for a longer period, right? After this, even the violation is persisting, they will be totally debarred for the entire period while the MCC is in force. And here, they should not be also eligible to be categorized as star campaigners for any political parties. Next, the initiation of punitive punishment or action should be measured also against political parties to apart from the candidates, right? And here, Election Commission of India must be given more power to actually deregister political parties too. Next, there must be a database which will be available on the Election Commission of India's website of all the violations, MCC violations by the candidates and the political parties too. Next, according to the Standing Committee on Personnel, Public Grievances, Law and Justice 2013, MCC must be made legal, right? So this is also a very, very important piece of recommendation. And finally, the experts and the various critics in the political circles, they also talk about the failure or say the lack of enforcement of MCC to the need for greater independence of the ECI, because the Election Commission of India and also the CEC, they are not properly also having enough independent powers, so they must be also given more wings, more teeth. And finally, according to Demosthenes, you cannot have a proud and chivalrous spirit if your conduct is mean and paltry. For whatever a man's actions are, such must be his spirit. It is highlighting the importance of leadership skills, right? It is highlighting the importance of political parties and political leaders to have good amount of moral caliber and ethical conduct too. In the next article, we'll be looking at India's chip dreams, and when we are talking about chip here, we are talking about semiconductors. And India is trying to emulate the global practices, the global best practices for the manufacturing of semiconductors in the country itself. And we are trying to draw lessons from this very important article that is talking about Sichu, which is a small town located in Taiwan, and it is considered as a model of semiconductor hub. And also India's own and Gujarat's own city of Dholera, if it tries to emulate this success of Sichu, it will be good for India's semiconductor mission too. Now, this is a very important article for UPSC prelims with reference to economic and social development, and also for GST, where we also have to look at various changes in industrial policy and also impacts on the industrial growth. Now, to start this article, we'll be looking at very basics first. See, semiconductors are those materials who have their electrical conductivity value between conductors and insulators. That means the conductors, they conduct electricity very efficiently, while the insulators, they have a high amount of resistivity. So semiconductors lie just in between them, and they are actually made of silicon, germanium and other kinds of materials which actually allow electricity selectively to pass through it. And it is a very important piece of a critical material for various electronic items such as the phone on which, or say the laptop on which you are watching me right now. So almost all of the electrical appliances, you will be definitely having semiconductors in that, and that is why the companies, the nations which dominate the semiconductor industries, producing industries, they dominate the entire electrical world and electronics world too. And here India's consumption of semiconductors is actually expected to cross $80 billion by 2026 and is also expected to reach $110 billion by 2030. So India is thinking, why not should we producing them in our own nation? Why not we should be exporting them from our own nation, and why should be depending on other nations for this? So here, for this we also need to in detail look at the supply chain, or say the process of manufacturing semiconductors from starting to end. See, it starts with semiconductor design houses. These are houses, or say these are actually companies which are Intel, onsemi, Qualcomm, Nvidia, Broadcom, AMD, right? These companies actually design the semiconductors on their specialized computers and equipments which are known as computer aided design. And this computer aided design is a specific software which is actually supplied by companies such as Cadence, Siemens, Synopsys. So it starts with the designing of the semiconductors at design houses, and specifically this is most of the designing of global semiconductor is actually taking place in the United States of America. After this, once the design is formalized, it is sent to the semiconductor foundries, or the places where the fabrication of the semiconductor, or say the manufacturing of semiconductor is actually taking place. This is actually taking place at major areas of the world such as Taiwan, South Korea, say in TSMC Taiwan, Samsung in South Korea. Then we also have global foundries UMC which are also located around in the same regions too. So these will be implementing the design and they will be trying to manufacture. Now here we also have within the same here process of manufacturing the semiconductors via manufacturing of silicon wafers which look like this. Now the manufacturing of silicon wafers is actually known as fabrication, and this is taking place through photolithography. So the process of manufacturing silicon wafers is actually known as photolithography, and this is actually taking place at various major companies such as this. And also apart from manufacturing silicon wafers, they also manufacture various other important components for semiconductors, right? Then this, after manufacturing of semiconductors, semiconductors are actually sent to assembly test houses. These are companies like UTAC, MCOR Technologies, right? Then after testing of the semiconductors, they will be sending for specifications and quality standards. Now these companies are actually again UTC and AMCO. Here the various equipments, materials and the various testing facilities will be also there. And apart from this, we also have critical logistics companies such as Airspace and CNW, which is transporting the various silicon, the various other raw materials, chemicals to the various industries here. So you can understand there is not only one company involved, and there is not only one Technica production which is involved. There is so much thing which is happening just behind powering your computers, televisions, smartphones and so on. So that is why we find that setting up of semiconductor industries in country will be boosting a lot of amount of production in the country, giving source of employment opportunities to the local people too. And also we have to find out that the leading chip makers in the entire world, right, it is actually backed by the US, right? The US forms around 47% of the total global semiconductor sales, right? And also we can see the other nations too. Apart from the US, we have Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and we cannot find India here. That is why we find that there is a need for increasing domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. Firstly, because semiconductor is the modern electronics industry. That means it is actually powering every single thing that operates electronically right now. Next, we also need to reduce our import dependency, and that is why we find that the demand will be increasing by $100 billion by 2025. That means this $100 billion is actually flowing away from our country. That means we are actually, losing a lot of foreign capital in this too, right? And the next point should be actually about overcoming disruption in the supply chain. We find that Taiwan is located just off the coast of China, and China is increasingly trying to eye Taiwan and trying to capture the entire region, and hence capture the entire semiconductor industries too. And that is why, if this takes place, or with respect to any other tensions such as tensions between China and US, this will be leading to supply chain issues, or say the distribution of the supply of semiconductors in the entire world. Then India's dependence, right, import dependence on these countries, they will be also trying to face another kind of issues too. Next, the strategic importance of semiconductor industries is also reflected, because we understand that if we try to produce more and more of semiconductors, we will be also trying to produce more and more of electronic items, and this will be leading to a growth of other strategic sectors, and also other countries will be also looking at India for the supply of semiconductors, such as continents like Latin America and also Africa. We can also try to increase their dependence on India's semiconductors. And finally, it will be also trying to attract foreign investments, because obviously we find that semiconductor industry and its promotion is not based on any one company or two. If you have seen in the last slide, we are actually going through many processes. So it will be attracting many companies in India too, which will be ultimately leading to India's economic development, employment opportunities, and various other aspects. And also, we have to learn from Sichu's lesson. And if we try to develop Gujarat's Dholera area and make it hub for global semiconductors, we have to understand what lessons is actually there in Taiwan's domestic cities too. And that is why we have to learn a lot from this small town. And actually this town was in its heydays, it was in a very dilapidated stages. There were no industries there in Taiwan, and gradually over a period of, say, government schemes and promotions to set up semiconductor industries in Taiwan, gradually the town developed, and now the average per capita income in terms of dollar is around $40,000 in this particular town itself. And obviously the setting up of Tata PMMC foundry in Gujarat's Dholera is also very much encouraged as of now. So we have to see how this particular issue is actually spanning out. Next, we have to look at the various government initiatives taken by India to promote more and more manufacturing of semiconductors. Firstly, we have Make in India. As we can see here, Make in India semiconductors for the world, right? The main ambition is to contribute to $1 trillion digital economy as a part of US $5 trillion economy by 2025-2026. Next, also we should be increasing the production target worth around 9.57 lakh crore over the next 20 years. Also, we should be increasing the semiconductor exports. And finally, the India Semiconductor Mission is also there to complement this particular scheme. And here, when we talk about India Semiconductor Mission, it is actually giving more incentives to states like Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, who have their own semiconductor manufacturing policies, right? We also need around various amounts of investments from the private companies to set up shop in the country, and that is why the Indian government has also given a lot of benefits to the companies, foreign companies which are coming into India and setting up. Next, we have the semiconductor design companies who will be given around 1,500 crores in 5 years. We also have the production linked incentive scheme for semiconductor industry, where the government will be giving 50% fund support, and around 76,000 crores have been earmarked for this scheme alone. We also have Chips to Startups program, where around 85,000 engineers will be trained for 5 years, because in India we have a lack of properly skilled individuals. Finally, we also have design linked incentive, which will be trying to promote more of that first stage of semiconductor production, that is starting with the designing of the same, majorly of which actually is taking place in the UK and the US. So we also have to try to create an entire ecosystem of semiconductor manufacturing in India via these government initiatives. In the next article, we'll be looking at the recent aspects of various repolls and adjournments which took place in Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, and we also have to look at the various rules and procedures of the Election Commission of India regarding the same. Very important topic for prelims in Indian polity and governance, and in GS2 when we have to look at the salient features of Representation of People's Act. Now, there can be many instances due to which the elections can be again taken place, such as which is actually known as repolling of the elections, and also sometimes it can be delayed, which is known as adjournments. So we have to look at 4 particular events. First event is actually intentional destruction or taking away of EVMs. There can be many issues during elections for which the people or say the various other rival political parties, they have actually tried to destroy the electoral process, or particularly say the EVMs. So according to section 58 of the RPA, right, so the returning officer should be immediately informing of any such event to the election commission and the chief electoral officer of the state. After this, the election commission can declare the election totally void if this is taking place, because this is a very severe offense. And here the contesting candidates or the other electoral agents, they should be informed in writing by the Election Commission of India, and after this a notice should be sent to the public places, and also the public should be informed of this decision of the Election Commission of India via the beat of drum. And finally, whenever the next election of the same particular area will be taking place, obviously we find that the first finger of the voters will already be painted. Now the next fingers will be actually inked whenever this next election will be taking place. In instance of booth capturing, according to section 135A of the RPA, right, election will be void if there is a booth capturing, and here presiding officer of a polling station should be immediately closing the control unit of the EVM if there is booth capturing. After closing, it should be informed to the returning officer again, and again the returning officer should be reporting the full facts to the election commission. And here in the election commission, I have 2 steps to take. First, it can declare the poll to be void, that means again cancel and starting with this process again, and it can direct a fresh poll. Otherwise, it can countermand the elections or say delay the elections, adjourn the election in the constituency. Next, due to natural disasters or any other disruptions due to damage, obstruction, riots, malfunctioning of say EVMs, right, according to section 57 subclause 1 of the RPA, right, the elections can recommence from the stage at which was left immediately, and only electors who have not already voted, they can vote when the election will be started again. Next, in the case of death of a candidate, the section 52 of the RPA tells on this matter too, that election should be adjourned, it should not be cancelled, it should be adjourned in those cases where the death is of a particular candidate from a recognized political party. It cannot be from any political party, it must be from a recognized political party. The candidate must be from a recognized political party. Then the returning officer should be reporting the fact to the Election Commission of India, and here the Election Commission of India can be adjourning the election. Then the concerned political party should be nominating other political candidate, and the nomination must be within 7 days. In the next one, we will be looking at missions to moon's far side, because China is set to launch the Chang'e 6 mission, which is a robotic spacecraft aimed at collecting samples from the moon's far side, and a very important topic for the general science and also for science and technological development from GS3. Now, when we have to understand the various sides of moon, we have 2 sides, the near side and the far side. See, the near side is actually the side which is permanently facing Earth, because we know that moon is tidally locked with Earth, right? That means one side of the moon is always locked whenever it is revolving around the Earth. That means whenever we look at moon, we only see the one side of the moon always, right? Because it is tidally locked with our Earth. And 60% of the lunar surface is actually from the near side, right? That means the side that is shown here, that the side we can obviously see always. This side is actually very smooth, having smoother plains and dark basaltic regions which are known as maria. Maria, this is a term which is very important, because these terms are actually asked by UPSC for time and again. Maria in Latin means seas, and these are formed by ancient volcanic eruptions. The far side of the moon is actually the side which is away from the Earth, as we can see here. This side is not as smooth as the near side. This is actually more rugged and have fewer maria, as we can see in this particular diagram. And here this is having a thinnest crust on the far side and less volcanic activity, which is a heavily cratered landscape. And here one of the largest craters in our solar system, that is known as South Pole Acheron Basin, is actually also found here. And according to various scientists and various researchers, we have to research this far side of the moon, particularly for various reasons. First, we can know the origins of the solar system if we look at the various samples and rocks from this side. Secondly, according to various scientists, we also have some traces of water on the far side and also on the south pole of the moon. So any research on this can also lead to traces of water evidence on the moon and also hopes of future colonization of the moon in the nearer times. Finally, we'll be looking at Prelims Snippet, the 4 important articles, starting with lightning deaths. See, whenever we are talking about lightning, we also have to understand that in high altitude clouds, we have various water droplets which coalesces between themselves and form ice droplets. So whenever these ice droplets, they come in contact with each other, they become charged. And whenever this charge is distributed from the clouds to the ground surface, we see a phenomenon known as lightning. So according to Earth Sciences Ministry, the cloud to ground lightning, or this phenomena, is actually claiming thousands of lives every year. The most amount of life which have been claimed is in Bihar, followed by MP and Uttar Pradesh. Apart from this, we have 2 more types of lightning, which is cloud to air lightning, where the lightning is actually passed through the air parcels, and also cloud to cloud lightning too. Now, here the districts which are more prone to lightning are actually those having more population density, and lightning strikes a record high in June and July, because in this month we have also the phenomenon of monsoon, which is also accompanied by a large number of thunder clouds too. And this is also right now, as we can see, through the interplay of easterly and westerly winds, because as we can see, the plains in India are actually more prone to thunderstorms, where warm and dry air from northwest India actually converges with the moist air which is emanating from the Bay of Bengal. So this is actually the interplay of this winds pattern and giving rise to deep convective clouds which supply lightning. In the next one, we'll be looking at International Criminal Court. It was set up under Rome Statute 2002, and India, US, China, as you can see here also, is not a part of the Rome Statute and hence not a part of the ICC. ICC investigates and prosecutes individuals based on the genocide, or say the crimes which the various state actors they perpetrate against the ethnic groups or any particular national groups. It is also against crimes of humanity, crimes against humanity, that such as rape, kidnapping, extortion, and so on. It is also crimes against, taking place during wars, or known as war crimes, also crimes of aggression. It is also known as a court of last resort, when the citizens in their own nation, they cannot get justice with respect to the various judicial authorities in their nation, so it can file appeal to the ICC too. And here the ICC have 4 principal organs known as the Assembly of State Parties, which is the governing body of the ICC. We also have the Presidency, which is the main judicial and administrative part of the ICC. We have the Office of the Prosecutor, which investigates various situations and cases. And finally, Registry, which provides administrative and judicial support to the court. In the next one, we'll be having a look at critical minerals, which are very important minerals, such as lithium, cobalt. As we can see, we every day use in our day-to-day life, such as batteries, electronic items, and so on. And these are part of multiple strategic value chains, starting from clean technologies such as solar panels, wind turbines. We also use them in our information technological appliances, and also in advanced manufacturing and various industries. And as we can see here, India is 100% import dependent on lithium, cobalt, nickel, vanadium, niobium, and various other critical minerals. And here there are many government initiatives to promote these critical minerals in the country. Firstly, India denoted these amounts of critical minerals as critical minerals legally in the country. So please do have a look, have a brief amount of look across these minerals here. Now note that here REE means rare earth elements. Okay. So here we have a list of many minerals, critical minerals. Please do have a look at it. Next, India also allowed the mining of lithium, niobium and rare earth elements in the country and liberalized mining. So to promote more and more mining and production of the same. Next, India also set up the Center of Excellence for Critical Minerals. It also set up the Khanij Bidesh India Limited, which is trying to form strategic joint ventures with various foreign companies. And also India is a part of this Mineral Security Partnership of MSP, which is a US-led coalition to secure the supply chain of critical minerals in the globe. And finally, we'll be looking at electronic trading platforms because recently RBI announced some regulation norms for them. Now see, if you can look at this, electronic trading platforms are actually looking at the, say, private distribution of shares, buying of shares, say government securities and various other kind of currencies, debentures, derivatives, such as financial products on their platforms, right? We have many examples such as say Zerodha, Grow and so on. Those are actually known as the electronic trading platform. The main regulator here is the Reserve Bank of India. And they are very distinct from the main stock exchanges. Firstly, from the scope, because at particular stock exchanges, companies list their shares. But in electronic trading exchange, they are the secondary market where the shares are actually traded between people. When it comes to regulation of stock exchanges, they are regulated by the SEBI, and here they are regulated by the RBI. The electronic trading platform, they are regulated by the RBI. And whenever we talk about memberships in BSE, NSE, which is the stock exchanges, you have to take memberships. But in electronic trading platforms, we do not have any membership of any norm. Now, the recent norm here that the electronic trading platform, they must be having a minimum net worth of 5 crore forever. They also have to maintaining various amount of technological infrastructure, and finally no entity resident or non-resident, right, can operate without obtaining any prior authorization of or having registered with the Reserve Bank of India. This means no electronic trading platform can operate without the authorization of the Reserve Bank of India in the country. Now I thank you all for being a very patient audience. I hope you enjoyed a lot. Please do attend the quiz which is following up right now. With this, I hope you all the best and best of luck. Till we meet again, all the best. Thank you.